In the heart of a quiet little town, where the morning light fell gently on the rooftops and trees whispered with the breeze, a man named Thomas began his mail route, just as he had every day for over 20 years. To others, he was just a postman, but to this town, he was something more. A gentle soul who brought a little warmth with each delivery. He always took a moment to greet the elderly, smile at the children, and sometimes slip a peppermint into a mailbox just to brighten someone's day. But that day, something changed. At a small blue mailbox on Oak Street, a soft sound caught his ear. Faint, fragile. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't a bird. It was a cry. Thomas leaned in and opened the mailbox. Inside, curled in the corner, was a tiny kitten, barely old enough to survive on her own, soaked from the night rain, shivering uncontrollably. Her eyes met his. In that instant, time stopped. Thomas felt his chest tighten. He reached in, slowly, carefully, like handling the most delicate letter he'd ever carried, and lifted her into his arms. She didn't resist. She simply curled against his warmth, weak but trusting. "I've got you now," he whispered. "You're safe." Thomas didn't finish his route that morning. Instead, he drove straight to the nearest animal hospital, one hand on the wheel, the other gently cradling the kitten wrapped in his scarf. He spoke to her the whole way. "You're gonna be all right, sweetheart. Just hold on. We'll get you warm. We'll get you fed." When they arrived, the vet techs rushed her in. Thomas stood there at the counter, hands trembling, staring at the doors she had disappeared behind. He hadn't known her for more than 20 minutes, but it felt like he'd known her forever. The hours ticked by like years. Thomas sat in the quiet waiting room, clutching his cap, heart heavy with worry. He kept replaying her eyes in his mind, that look of helpless trust. He hadn't expected to care so quickly. But life has a funny way of slipping into your heart when you least expect it. Finally, the vet came out. "She's weak," she said gently, "but she's a fighter. With proper care, she'll make it." Thomas let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. His eyes watered, not from relief alone, but from the realization that he hadn't come there just to save her. He had already fallen for her. Every day after his shift, Thomas visited her. He brought a new toy, a soft blanket, little treats. He named her Maila, after where they met. Maila grew stronger day by day. She began to meow when she saw him. She'd bat at his fingers, roll on her back, and curl into his lap as if he were home. And he was. He read books to her, talked about his day, told her things he'd never said out loud. Somehow, this little creature listened better than anyone else ever had. They healed together. 3 weeks later, the vet smiled and said the words he'd been hoping for. "She's ready to go home." Thomas stared at Mila through the glass. Her eyes, once full of fear, now sparkled with mischief. He signed the papers with tears in his eyes and a grin on his face. She was no longer a stray, no longer alone. She was family. Life with Mila was never the same. She waited for him at the door every afternoon, leaping into his arms like a child welcoming their parent home. She perched beside his morning coffee. She napped on the stack of letters in his van. Sometimes, when he had a long route, she rode along in a cozy basket by his side. Neighbors began leaving treats for her. Children drew her in crayon drawings. The entire town watched their story unfold. Thomas, the quiet postman, had found something he didn't know was missing. And Mela, she had found the one person in the world who saw her as more than just a lost kitten. Years passed. Mela grew into a beautiful cat, curious, gentle, endlessly affectionate. Thomas grew older too. His steps slowed, his hair turned silver, but his eyes never lost their spark, especially when she was near. On rainy days, they sat by the window together. On cold nights, she curled against his chest as he dozed off in his chair. They had become a story, one of quiet love, of unexpected beginnings, of second chances. One day, when Thomas was no longer able to walk his route, the town gathered to celebrate him. They didn't bring cards or plaques. They brought stories about kindness, about quiet heroism, about a kitten who reminded everyone that even the smallest life deserves a chance. Mila sat beside his chair, as proud and noble as a queen, accepting ear scratches and pats like she understood every word. And when it came time to speak, Thomas simply said, she saved me too. In a world that moves fast and forgets easily, stories like Thomas and Mayla's remind us that love doesn't ask permission, that family is not always by blood, but by bond, and that sometimes heroes wear postal uniforms and carry hope in their hearts.